All right, good morning, everyone. We're about to start. Thanks for attending the second day of the 25th Diversity Conference. Very pleased to see you here again. And let's begin with today's deliberations. We're going to have our colleague Christina Hajisoteriou. I met Christina some years ago, and we worked together on a master's program on intercultural education and mediation. We had a very good collaborative experience together, and together with Professor Panagiotis Angelidis. So we're very pleased to have her here to talk us about the meanings of diversity and new races in the VUCA area. So Mary explained this term yesterday, all these words, and Christina today is going to talk to us about diversity. Christina's current role is important. Used to be associate professor at the University of Nicosia, but now she has joined the office of the Commissioner for Children's Rights here in Cyprus as the head of the office. And it's going to be very interesting for Christina and you to exchange ideas on the meanings of diversity and racism.
Good morning, everyone. Thank you for being in Cyprus, and thank you for joining this conference co-organized by the University of Nicosia. Today I'm going to talk about the meanings of diversity and new races in the VUCA era. Yesterday, Professor Kalantzis talked about the meanings of totality, uncertainty, complexity, and ambiguity. And it is very important to see what the meanings of these words have for the perceptions that we have in our current times about diversity and how new races is formatted and also practiced. In this presentation, I'm going to provide some information on the context, the challenge that we are facing in this era, and I will make a suggestion about our response. Of course, I have to say that despite my current role at the Office of the Commissioner for Children's Rights, I'm talking under the hat of my former affiliation as an academic. So these ideas are ideas developed through the years and are not expressed through my current role. In terms of the context, what are we talking about? In the former years, in the past decades, we have witnessed a pass from global interconnectedness to what some people call as total globalization. And what we mean by that, in the former years, global interconnectedness has intensified the increased movement of people, the increased movement of ideas, the increased movement of ethnoscapes, and also we have witnessed the interconnectedness in terms of economy, global economic interactions, and technology. Through the years, though, some academics argue that we should be talking about the moment of total globalization. And it is important to examine whether indeed we have entered this moment of total globalization. And what do they mean by this term? They refer to the global being the primary domain of action, the primary domain of representation, not only for economy and commerce, but also for governance, and maybe personality, maybe identity, maybe diversity is perceived through this new meaning of globalization and through this new form. I would say that in this moment that total globalization has created for our world, what we see is that the dynamics of the super global economy are affecting not only global governance, but also they have created unpredictable geopolitical events. And also, we have witnessed how different kinds of crises, we had the COVID crisis affecting all over the world, environmental crisis affecting one area that create multiplication effects on different areas of the world. So all these have resulted to mass displacements and, if I may say, super migration. And it is important to refer to this term that we should differentiate from super diversity, because when we talk about super migration, we are talking about intensified forms that due this to intensified characteristic and component, it is used politically and economically by governments, politicians, people to perceive the world differently, and also to make an appeal to refrain from diversity policies, or what we call in Europe as interculturalism and policies of interculturalism. For some people, this moment of total globalization has intensified the characteristics of VUCA world, and vice versa. So this vocality, let's say, of the word intensifies also the phenomenon of supermigration, and also other characteristics such as ambiguity and volatility of the word. It is important to realize that this moment of total globalization is also the moment to build collaborative strategies, and it is the moment to realize that only collaboratively we can address these challenges that we are now facing. This vocality, in terms of ambiguity, volatility, complexity, has created a situation where many people, many politicians feel uncomfortable, in simple words. And some people try to take advantage of this situation, of this uncomfortable feeling, in order to find a momentum and create a reactive response. Some academics, they portray this reactive response as post-globalization. Post-globalization refers and is a shift away from the intense interconnectedness and the free-flowing market, of course, and a call to go back to national identities, a call to go back to domestic production, and a call maybe to go back to fighting against diversity. So we see how vocality has created these feelings of not being comfortable because of the multiple crises, COVID, economic crisis, people are feeling unsafe, politicians taking advantage of the whole situation, economic giants taking advantage of the whole situation, and portraying the whole situation in the colors that they want. And what are these colors? Black and white, and of course, not the whole spectrum. Why? Why did this happen? In a VUCA world, they say that the ideal of seamless global integration becomes fragile. And what is their argument? That financial crisis, pandemics, climate disasters, causing this volatility of the world, reveal the vulnerabilities of the hyper-connected global supply chains. And they build this narrative of economies being self-reliant, of localized systems being self-reliant, and thus of nations being self-reliant. And you see the connection here. This is exactly the challenge. This is exactly the way they manipulate the narrative. Also, this uncertainty that makes people feel uncomfortable, the uncertainty about geopolitical alignments, how a political situation, a war in a specific region affects the global economy, affects the global dynamics, technological disruptions, and all the issues talk around environmental sustainability. What do these people say? That they make long-term global commitments riskier. So again, they endorse this narrative of vocality as being a call to go back to where we started. Also, they continue with this narrative and they talk about complexity, a complex world driven by supermigration. For example, Cyprus. Cyprus is a country that in the European Union is receiving a high number of migrants and refugees, and has one of the highest percentages of receivers in the European Union, according to the, in comparison to the population of the country. This supermigration is portrayed by the media, by politicians, as a daunting task for people, as affecting the national economy. The national economy has been affected before, though. It wasn't about these people. Also, this narrative is leading to the fragmentation of the society and the rise of protectionist and nationalist discourses. This narrative talks about ambiguity also. It says that our norms and values as a nation, as nations around the world, are threatened. It calls about threats to our identity, our language. It talks about national purification. It talks about security. And you see the meaning of the words here, security. Politicians, media, they talk about our security, and we want to be secure, right? And in this way, they built a narrative of national sovereignty, cultural preservation, and the limits of multiculturalism. What we can say is that this unpredictability and this perceived loss of control in the era of vocality has provoked this desire, has provoked this narrative to reclaim certainty, to reclaim stability, to reclaim identity. How one feels secure, how one feels stable when we know who we are. And this is exactly the emotional and the political fuel behind not only this narrative, but also this practice. And this is the fuel behind post-globalization. And we are not talking only about a policy shift. We are not only talking about a reactionary move, as I said before, a reaction to what is going on. But we are talking about a narrative that calls for a paradigm shift. A paradigm shift that wants to reestablish borders, and they say that this matches belonging, but at the same time to reestablish control. In an age that for most people, that we are affected by the economic crisis in our micro worlds, feels that lacks quality in governance and success in governance. So in this context, what is the challenge? What is the challenge that we're facing? The challenge is new races. This vocality era creates not only social confusion, we are also talking about a post-truth era. We don't know what exactly is truth. We are reading news on social media, on broadcasting channels, and we're not even sure about what to believe. It's also a phase of social hypocrisy. We are talking about the humanity, we are talking about the need to do good, but at the same time we say, yes, but first for our people. And in this moment, new races arise as new patterns of inequality and new patterns of prejudice. It is an emergent form of racism. It is an emergent form of segregation. And why? How does these new racism, some academics call these new racism as liquid racism. It's fluid. It's not that explicit. This new racism thrives in ambiguity. It rationalizes without using racial language. It is the use of the word but. In these narratives, anti-racist vocabularies are used. Politically correct language is used. This new racism is not that explicit. It doesn't sound that cruel, but it is. It has the same and even worse consequences because it is not that apparent. It is as dangerous as old racism. And you can see it in the political narratives or other narratives that use at the same time anti-racist and racist remarks. For example, in Cyprus, if I may give an example, they say, we welcome migrants, but only the ones that are safe and secure for us. We are welcome to refugees, but the country is so small we cannot accept everyone. This word but is a little trick. And how can we see this new racism manifesting itself? We see it in the discourses of social problematization, the problematic other. We portray the others as a problem, a social burden that needs to be addressed immediately. For example, in Cyprus, the media say that there is a fear of rapid demographic change. Some politicians endorse that too. So we scapegoat migrants and refugees, and this volatility that we're talking before that created these feelings, this fear of rapid demographic change creates more volatility. Collectivization, we portray the other as a distant other. We present the others as objects, as a homogeneous group that has identical characteristics despite anything else. And these characteristics, we perceive them as being substantially different from our characteristics. And we see simplified narratives emerging. And now maybe a lot of you are wondering, okay, these are all forms of racism. Of course they are. It is the way they are expressed. So again, we have this bipolar opposition of us versus them, but the way is done, this is done, is different. Victimization. Sometimes we like to present ourselves as the philanthropists who provide help to the passive recipients who need it. We see the others as helpless and impoverished people that we might help. And this narrative is a difficult narrative because it mostly manifests itself as humanitarianism. And it doesn't give the power to people. It doesn't talk about empowerment. It talks about manipulation again. It talks about oppression again. And also we talk about culturalization. We believe that the others should be encultured by adopting our values, our lifestyles. And again, we have this re-emergence of identity politics that creates cultural anxiety to people, to simple people like you and me. And this fuels uncertainty. And what are these practices of new races? For example, let's see some examples. In policy, for example, we have the hostile environment in immigration policies. In Cyprus, we have a strong migration framework at the moment that is being implemented. In some countries, the US, for example, they talk about the refugee cap, annual limit set by the government on the number of refugees that could be admitted in the country in each fiscal year, and anti-woke legislation. In media, we have a lot of this happening in Cyprus, moral panics around cultural change and invasion language. And of course, this era of brutality is characterized by online hate amplification, hate comments in the media. And how do we see these moments? That, of course, we are human, but when our people are suffering because of the economic crisis, we have to see our people first and then the rest. And we see this kind of comments on the media. There were some research in Cyprus. There was two pieces of research on online hate comments with regards to migration. And in society, we get to have microaggressions. In Cyprus, these microaggressions often become headlines in newspapers and in media, and create more vocality. And this more vocality creates more racism, and vice versa. And sometimes we see exclusion or bad practices in employment, education, and housing. What should be the response? We should be starting to talk about this response, especially in the academic domain. Of course, we need to see diversities, I will say, differently. It is very important at this moment to leave behind reductionist approaches. Such approaches, they highlight the self-contained and unified cultural traits that we have. Or sometimes they are being excessively enthusiastic about other cultures. They have good intentions sometimes. Okay, let's promote other cultures, let's have cultural festivals, food festivals. But this exemplifies more and more new races because it contributes to this culturalization that I talked before. Also, we need to abandon universalist approaches. Such approaches, they just see culture as superficial decorations of the universal. Sometimes we are over-enthusiastic about just emphasizing our shared and common human denominators, shared and common human characteristics. Because we really want people to live together, to collaborate together, to act together. But in this era of vocality, this might not work. It might be the time to work more and reflect this. It doesn't mean that I suggest that we should, this is the only way that we should go. It's just food for thought and a way to start thinking about where we should move next. It is important to endorse ethno-relativist approaches, to understand that cultures can only be understood relative to one another, that there are some particular behaviors that can only be understood within a cultural context, but cultures are not self-contained or clean. And at the same time, it is important to understand the cultural hybridity, and that cultures are unstable mixtures of sameness but also otherness, and that we do not have single and monolithic identities. And in this way, we may move the debate forward, especially through education. It is important also to see diversities differently in terms of ideas. Nowadays, for some people, it's difficult to express their ideas because of policy changes, because of paradigm shifts. And it's important to understand that each one of us has something to share with us, but something also could be there. We need change. It is the time to reflect on normative and epistemic change. I didn't even talk about the rapid growth of AI and how it influences all this locality. It's important to step back and acknowledge again the interconnected operations and bring it out again and challenge Eurocentric norms and epistemologies. It is important to talk again about structural change and reflect on that. We need more research on that, more research on structural change. And of course, societal change. We cannot sacrifice justice just to adapt to uncertainty. We cannot sacrifice justice just to build more resilient societies in terms of economy. And of course, we need social transformation, especially through education. We need more education for critical consciousness. And we should go beyond unconscious bias training. We need more policies with social justice at the core and not just compliance. And academics, researchers, but also policy think tanks, they need to produce more ideas on that, despite the challenges we've seen before. And especially the civil society needs to create more spaces for voice and accountability. We spent a decade talking about the importance of voices, and it seems that in the last 1 or 2 years, some want us to become voices again. And at the individual level, each one of us needs to do something to actively disturb new racism. And here I'm endorsing a framework for social transformation and the importance to follow these 4 steps and build policies and build actions and build individual behaviors according to these 4 levels to resist, to work against the current system. Some examples are non-violent civil disobedience, direct action, community organizing. As individuals, empower conceits without demand. To reform, when we have to work within the current system, when we have to meet urgent needs, and this can only be done through the current structures, let's try to push institutions to direct resources in human services, in policy development, and of course the way we practice our electoral rights, our voting rights. Reimagining, we need a vision and just new system. Some philosophers of education, they talk about social imagination. They need to cultivate in students social imagination in terms of re-envisioning a new order of things that is more socially just. And we could do so through the arts, through media, through academia. And let's recreate, let's build the just system we envision through democratic schools, through restorative justice and collaboration across public and private sector and enterprises and civil society. These 4 hours of social transformation are a conceptual framework by Jody Lasseter. The response to new racism in the VUCA era, for me, is not just inclusion. It is transformation. So, in conclusion, for me, there is more work to be done on this transition. Some references. Thank you so much for your attention.
I think we can open this floor for discussion and some questions to our speaker. Do you feel reinvigorated after this talk about our responsibilities towards societal change? It's too early, I think, in the morning.
Yes.
Or instead? Yep. First one and
So, I want to ask, you told that...
Hold on a minute. And we have the second one. Δουλεύει. Και αν θες, Χριστίνα, θες να σηκωθείς μπροστά.
Ναι, επειδή σου
Yeah, okay.
Be persistent.
You mentioned that spirituality may solve the VUCA issues. However, we have crimes and racism in the name of spirituality, in the name of religion. So how do you see religion solving these things?
Yes, I had in one of my, can you hear me? I had in one of my slides spirituality, but when we talk about spiritual domains, we don't just talk about religion, we talk about the way we understand. And we position ourselves through the biggest philosophical questions. So that was what I meant. I didn't expand on that point on my slide. So it is important to understand that the way we perceive and we position ourselves to the biggest philosophical questions, being life, God, and so on, it opens a debate for acceptance. And I agree with you that religion has been used by a lot, not only to cause wars, but also we have seen terrorist attacks in Europe. We had a lot of terrorist attacks in the name of religion, in the name of a specific God that someone believes to. But also in terms of the theory of interculturalism and the policies of interculturalism. Sorry, but I had a difficult flu, that's why I'm talking a bit weird. In Europe, what we have seen is that in some countries, they try to leave religious education completely out of schools. And in some countries, that they try to create this cosmopolitan kind of school that it's free from any religious elements. It doesn't really help to what you caught, to what you exactly spotted. So maybe it is the time to talk about religion again in schools. Put it in our curricula, but in a different way. Not in the way of being taught about a specific religion, but about being taught how to develop my critical consciousness on religion, on spirituality, on the way we position ourselves. There is a lot of debate in intercultural education about the format of religious education, and there are very different models on how religious education should be, or if it should be practiced at all in schools. And some talk about the way we could project common values, but I believe that this goes back to universalist approaches, that at the moment of this vocality and these narratives that arise, that they try to bring back the national identities, these might not help. So I believe that we need to confront all these tough topics that we currently avoid in many education systems around the world. It's not the same for each country, but I believe that we need to reflect on that.
Christina, μίλα από εκεί για να μην...
Ναι. And yes.
This is working on.
Yeah.
I have to face a different way. So it's now working, so I'm going to give you the side up.
Yeah, okay.
It's not intentional. Thank you for your presentation and illuminating the issue of the globalized move towards, frankly, fascism. And I want to talk about America because that's where I live. And the suggestions that you have in terms of being more proactive in insisting on discussions and opening topics is now illegal in the United States. DEI or EDI, diversity, inclusivity and equity, is now illegal. There are certain departments in the federal government, for example, the Census Bureau, who are required to report any instance of DEI education. In schools and colleges across the country, it's now illegal to talk about DEI. Race theory has been eliminated from critical theory teaching in colleges. So I wondered if you had any perspective on that as to what kind of approach should we be taking. We need to protect our students from being snatched off the streets and snatched from classes and churches. But we are hampered by the fact that we have legal mandates.
Yes, I've been to a conference last year in the States, in the ERA conference, and they were talking about that. There were presentations on that topic, and of course, it's quite a difficult situation. And all the context that I talked before, in the US, I believe that without being very knowledgeable of the US system, but it manifests itself in this effort to mutate every single effort on that. Of course, a lot of ideas apply to the European context, and especially the Cypriot context, where I mostly carry out my research, but we are living in difficult times. And I believe that it is important to find a way to voice our perceptions and our ideas despite of the humankind has been through such difficult situations also in the past across the history, but it is very important to collaborate. In one of my slides, I had the cooperatives, because as you said, that it is illegal to talk most of the times. So, of course, I'm not, as I said, that familiar with the US context. I believe that it is important to unite forces. For example, despite voicing, instead of just voicing my perception as Christina, as a person, let's unite, like Harvard did in the letter sending with the opposition that they had to the measures imposed to universities. So in this way, especially the universities communities, I understand that it is this difficulty of economic financing towards the universities. But the universities should be the voice of people.
I absolutely agree, but unfortunately, universities are being stripped of funding. The NIH, which is the health body, which is the spearhead of all medical research in the US, has been terminated completely. And I'm sure many of you have read about the DEA defunding and the fact that Trump is now the head of the DEA. So this is, there are extraordinary measures being taken against Harvard. They want Harvard to be handed over to the government.
Yes.
And so I really appreciate the fact that you're saying that we should, find some kind of collaborative methodology, but it does affect so much the ability of any college, not just Harvard, to function.
Well, the only thing that, I was reading a lot about lobbying and activism in a way that it doesn't have to be that proactive, but it could follow smaller steps. So I really believe in cooperatives and in finding your voice outside the US. So for example, if you unite forces with academics in Europe, a lot of people, they don't really know what is going on in the US, in the broader society. And also, a lot of academics might not be really knowing what is going on in the US. So it is, I believe that only through collaboration you can regain your voices. Maybe by uniting forces, if you say that this is very difficult within the country, unite forces with people, academics, artists, musicians, outside the country. It is a difficult moment, and of course I don't have a solution on that, but I really believe that it is the momentum for the humanity to unite again.
Thank you. All right, we have another question.
Here. So thank you, Dr. Christina, for your presentation. I was very excited to see your thoughts on spirituality, or hear more about your thoughts on spirituality, because I teach theology and religious studies, anthropology of religion, at the university level at Georgetown University, a Catholic Jesuit institution. I just finished a year in Qatar. We have a campus there. And it's in that vein of spirituality that I ask this question. I was really struck by this idea of super migration and the fear, sort of worldwide fear, that is causing. And I'm wondering what role tribalism plays in that anxiety, and what could a hermeneutic of hope cast, what picture or image of a new world, right, could seeing things through a lens of hope rather than anxiety and critique cast for the world? What is the vision that we're not getting because of all our anxieties?
I think here you're not just posing a question, but you're making a suggestion. And it is very important to perceive the world through a lens of hope, as you said. And one of the steps was re-envisioning a new system, I said, but I prefer your word, re-envisioning the world through hope, and that it is indeed very important. And in sociology of education, we talk about the resources of hope that schools may use, the resources of hope. There is one piece of research, I don't remember the author now, who was talking about the resources of hope that we need to endorse. And then it was in education, because my field is education, and it was talking about the resources of, as he was saying, true hope, meaning hope that it could actually take place as practice, and not just hope in terms of a vision that will never materialize itself. So of course, it is very important. The problem now is that, particularly in Cyprus, social media are exacerbating anxiety. And since COVID, because the economic situation of most people has been affected, people cannot really see the light in the end of the tunnel, because they are facing difficulties in their everyday lives, in paying their bills, in being okay with their children and their families. And I think that each one of us, we are closed in our own shells, and we cannot see the light. It's like we forgot how to hope in better days.
Okay, some more questions, gentlemen there, and then yes, sir.
I have actually a comment, not a question. I believe thank you for your presentation. I want to add my voice to support your idea about the need for the campuses in the USA to collaborate. I believe that the academic world in the US was caught by surprise, and they underestimated what the current administration will do. And every university is trying to save itself. And instead, at least on the state level, my state, we have 7 campuses connected, and we cannot find formula how to collaborate collectively. So the need for collaboration, there is, my guess, but I'm not sure about this, that the academic elite is somewhat biased or been trapped all these years aligned itself with the government. They've never been critical what the government do. It's more of because of economic needs, economic support, the academic elite became prisoner of the administration and the government. So time to decouple this relationship and free the academic world from dominance of the politics. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for your comment.
Yes.
Yeah. Hi. Thank you, Kyria Hajisoteriou.
Yes.
I come from Greece, so I want to stay in 2 topics. The one is has to do with small countries. So I come from Greece, and we're in Cyprus. So I understand when people say that they fear from the high number of arrivals. I understand when they fear for cultural social integration, they say to me, I'm a teacher in Athens. So, when they speak about security, employment, and other things, of course, it's not so. This fear is not for me racist also. But we don't speak about targeting people, and that is racism. So, and the other one is for countries, small countries, like Greece or Cyprus, when we borrow, so things that have with racism and what they say. People say in Athens, for example, that happens in America, that happens in London. What has to do with Athens? I understand also in this opinion. So when we take things from this being gross in these countries, USA or United Kingdom, we must stay critical, very critical, and to take these examples with skepsis. Thank you, Christina.
Thank you. This is a comment and a question that I usually get from my students when I was teaching in a course of intercultural education, that we live in a really small country. Cyprus, it's a tiny, tiny island. And how many people can reside here? How many people can come here? And how can we find jobs when we finish the university? And what shall be done? But I believe that the locus of our attention should be different. It shouldn't be on the people coming here and the numbers, but it should be on the policies that the state has and accountability strategies for employment, for housing. For example, in Cyprus, we have I was reading in the newspaper that we have high numbers of undeclared employment. That means people who go and register for the system and provide employment. Whose fault is that? And they say most of these people, the numbers that they believe because of some police investigations going on when someone makes a complaint, or most of these people are migrant or refugee origin. Whose fault is that? The migrants or the refugees, or the employers who doesn't follow the law? Whose fault is that? The employers or the state who doesn't have accountability strategies and mechanisms to make the law happen? So, for example, when we have high numbers of people that work as a registered employees, and especially as a registered blue-collar workers, that means that we have a lot of people outside the health system, outside the social insurance system, and a lot of people who come from Cyprus, who provide, for example, similar type of work, and they are not willing to be employed under these terms. They will stay outside employment. So I believe that our attention shouldn't be on the numbers. I talked before about some policies requesting a refugee cap, but we should talk about how, as a state, we operate, as a state should operate to protect our citizens, and I mean every single person in terms of employment, housing, and so on.
Thank you, Christina. And anyone else? Otherwise, thank you, Christina. And
Thank you.
dear friends, it seems that we have left our democracies unguarded for many years. And now it's time for us to pay for it. I know that it's a bit ugly sentiment for us, but as a citizen, I felt very awkward when we went through the crisis in Greece, the financial crisis, and I'm saying that I've lost 10 years of my life, and I believe that I did, because I felt helpless against the populism and the fascist way that the then government tried, and it was like a left government, supposedly. So democracies, I think, have to fear from within, not from outsiders. We always try to find somewhere else, the other, that does the damage. But it seems like in America now, you have to take your own battles. And we would like to help you, if we can. I take the liberty as a chair of this research network to discuss with Philip Kalantis-Hope and Tamzin and Rosa Louise and the rest of the team, how we can support this transformation. Christina talked about transformation. Thank God we have Mary here, Bill Cobb, and they talk about civic pluralism. It is the way that we're going to engage with transformation, digital age, the challenges lay ahead of us, and it is this framework that we think that we need to work with. So we need to rationalize ourselves within this new complexity, through this new context, and assume new roles and responsibilities. As citizens in this globalized world, we have too many roles to play. Let's play them. Otherwise, we cannot blame anyone else. So its responsibility lies with us, but of course, to our states, politicians, and you name it, all the institutions that we have developed as humans. So in liberal democracies, that's our issue here. And we're very sorry to hear that in the States, you face such a great deal of ordeal and a problem. But we need to stand by you, and I think the research networks, the diversity research networks, can forge an alliance to support you. I'm going to talk, with your permission, to Philip about that, and of course, to form this alliance, I would say, of resilience. We have to be resilient in these times. And again, another sort of action that we could take is to forge community interfaith or community dialogues. For example, with Istanbul and the Patriarch, the Orthodox, or Catholics, or you name it. If you have, so we need to activate you as people, as stakeholders within your context, and give us ideas to do so. But we're going to be very prompt in organizing all these, and of course bring society with us. We need social change. Without society, education cannot do it by itself. Let's be realistic. We can't. And it's very easy to say, even for politicians, that let's train people to do that. We cannot battle inequality only through education. If inequality is born in everyday transactions, in everyday sort of dealings. So we need the society with us. And here in Cyprus, to be honest, I cannot see any society in here. Where's the secret society at this conference? So we need to mobilize them. And the secret counterparts here and colleagues have a lot of work to do. We thought to have this conference here in Cyprus in order to give voice to these people. But I think they're very complacent, very easygoing about their lives. Not only Cyprus, but in Greece, in every country. Do not take me wrong. So I think that we have a lot of work ahead of us, but I trust that we have a great network with people enthusiasts about what they do and their contribution to the society. So I think we need to continue talking and continue acting. Thank you. And now let's go to, thank you, Christina, for your
Thank you. I
input.
think